Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Welcome! Hello, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the NFC North of movie podcasts. On this Super Bowl weekend, we are the podcast that consistently has pretty good content. We usually get in there and make the playoffs, but do we always win? No. But you know what? We are an iHeartRadio podcast awards eligible podcast.
Are we?
Yeah, we are. Technically, we are eligible because we are on that platform.
I didn't know.
But we didn't win. We didn't win this year. So welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. I am Joel.
And I'm Ryan.
And we're back for another week of talking about the movies of 2021, going a little back in time, doing a little movie history, but recent movie history. We're not going to go back. We're not talking about the movies of the 70s. We're not going to go John Hughes and acid wash denim of the 80s. We are not going to pop our collars and do I guess that was still more 80s, but 90s would be flannel. We're not going to do flannel and Doc Martens of the 90s. And I have no idea what fashion was like in the 2000s. But we're here. We're going to talk about 2021. And we're going to continue talking. Well, let's dive right in because we got a lot of movies we want to try to get to today, and some really good ones. So we're going to jump right in and get old and get macho with a little Clint Eastwood. We're going to talk about crime thrillers, and the first one up is Crime Macho with Clint Eastwood.
This is a lot like it's not a lot. I mean, it shares a lot of similarities with the final Rambo movie, but it's actually a much easier to watch and more sensitive movie. But a ranch hand type of dude is sent by his boss, or basically extorted by his boss, played by the always awesome what's his face, country singer guy. He's so
Dwight
good.
Yoakam.
So ever since Panic Room, right? I mean, it's every time he shows up in something, he's awesome. So not a big role for him, but he definitely maximizes his screen time like every character actor should. And he's got Eastwood to play off, so if he doesn't do something, then nobody's doing anything in that scene. That's important.
Yeah,
it's important that you lay it down, right? But read the synopsis. I don't know. I'm not going to make up synopsises today. I need you to do that for me.
Yeah, no. It's a one-time rodeo star and washed-up horse breeder takes a job to bring a man's young son home and away from his alcoholic mom. On their journey, the horseman finds redemption through teaching the boy what it means to be a good man.
Alcoholic mom doesn't begin to cover it. She's she's the queen of the sort of Mexican underworld of this particular town, and hooked up with a lot of sort of bad people who pursue these guys all the way through Mexico back to the border. And of course, it's one of these reverse white people. There's a whole bunch of them, from monsters. So they just go on and on. Where now the tables are turned, and now you're trying to get out of Mexico, and it's but it's to its credit, it's lovely, and it's more complicated than that. And Clint Eastwood with animals, or Clint Eastwood with a kid, at this point, grandpa with anything fun and different to play off of is a fun and entertaining thing. It's probably would have been best if Clint would have hung it up with Gran Torino, which he was, because it was the last movie, and it's surely the last movie that he's ever going to, as an actor, that he's ever going to be just truly stunningly good in. This is just more of the same, but it not as good, but still enjoyable. And I hope he directs himself into the grave, because the films he directs, is good or bad, are always interesting. But I thought The Mule, this, especially the movie he didn't direct that he starred in, the baseball movie, which I can't remember the name of it.
Oh my God.
Trouble with the Curve.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I could see why it'd be neat for an old actor to be like, oh, you want me? 96-year-old Clint Eastwood.
91.
Yeah, it's
91. Yep.
So they're all. I don't have anything totally rotten to say about any of those movies. Trouble with the Curve has some issues, but the ones Eastwood's in charge of, he's a really self-assured storyteller. And we talked a couple of years ago about or was it just last year even? He works really fast.
Right.
With it's the name of the guy, the Atlanta Olympic bombing movie.
Oh, the Richard Jewell, yeah.
Richard Jewell's as good a movie as Clint's ever made, so he's still got it.
Yeah.
But it is a bit of a one note. If you've seen him in anything recently, it's what you expect, and it certainly isn't any better than that. But this one has the high floor and the low ceiling, so it does fit comfortably in that very watchable, enjoyable sort of. This crime drama, right? It's not a crime thriller. Nothing thrilling about it. Did I put it in the wrong category?
Yeah, well, I mean, you put it in thriller. So I guess
probably just for its plot machinations, because there's not even a lot of crime in this. This really is a drama, if you really have to nail it.
Sure.
It's about these people and their relationships, and it's thematically, it's got a lot going on in it, which I appreciate. But you have to like these other Clint Eastwood starring vehicles to enjoy this. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, it's it's a project that's been kicking around Hollywood for 30 years, it looks like here, and so it before Eastwood, it was going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm sure that would have been a very different movie. And then before that, it was Roy Scheider was going to be in it back in the early 90s.
Interesting.
So
that would have been different too.
Mm-hmm.
This is Eastwood all the way. It's his filmmaking style. He directed it. He's starring in it. Obviously, he's not a writer, so the script does matter, and it's a good script. I can see why it's it doesn't say blockbuster, it doesn't say big hit movie on it, and hasn't all the way along. But I can see why people who know scripts and Hollywood stories were attracted to this throughout the years, because it's a lovely script. It's a neat old-fashioned story, and it told in a very simple and elegant way by a really, really refined, at this point, storyteller who knows what he's doing. And I thought it was fine, but it's hard to get. It's not the top of his list, but it's not at the bottom of his list either. It's right in the middle there.
Well, there you go. All right, next up. Well, it's a Guy Ritchie film. And Guy Ritchie teaming up with Jason Statham, and that would be Wrath of Man.
Read the deal for this.
The plot follows H, a cold and mysterious character working at a cash truck company responsible for moving hundreds of millions of dollars around Los Angeles each week.
So it's armored car and armored car related crime, big time shoot 'em outs, because Statham's in it. There's lots of, sort of Northern England kung fu as well.
Mm-hmm.
I really dug this movie, actually. The side characters are all giving it their all, and that can go either way in a film like this. Some of my favorites showing up, and they're being given a lot to do in a screenplay with a main character who does and says very, very little. So Holt McCallany's in it, and he's great in it. Jeffrey Donovan's great in it. We're always happy to see Jeff.
Minnesota's own Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, and Josh is great in it too. It's a list like that of these other leading men basically that are all in these little adjunct roles, and it's fun. And there's a bunch of women in it too that get to do different sort of things than you would normally expect in this sort of story. So I like that aspect of it too. The best Guy Ritchie movie I've seen in a while. Really, really driving, really mega violent, hard and unsympathetic tale of revenge is basically what it is. And to get into the details, these should blow by pretty quick, these crime movies, because to tell you what happens or what the real story is behind the fake story, which, in a film like this, H, shows up to work he's clearly overqualified. He's like a kung fu gun fighting Superman. He breaks up early in the film. He breaks up one of these, it's not a spoiler to say he saves the day on one of these attempted robberies, and in spectacular fashion. And anyone with a half a brain in their head are like, this isn't fit. This isn't right. We don't know anything about this guy. We should know more about what's going on. But the corporate guys and the guys who care about the bank vaults and stuff, they're all like, what are you talking about? He's a gift wrap ham sandwich on rye. We love him. Make him employee of the month. That's their solution. And then this weasels its way to a rather explosive ending. But it's dark. It's got a lot of dark violence in it. The revenge that's taking place is for an absolutely heinous act of murder and destruction. And so it was a dark film, but it just so full of energy and so full of drive and incredible forward momentum. I wasn't expecting that from Guy at this point, because his British crime thrillers are relatively laborious to get through. There's a lot of there's tons of talk and just tons of nonsense, and you just scenes upon scenes that are cool but don't end up meaning much in the end.
It's often too clever by half. And
this film is got a linear boom, 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 and I found that exhilarating when I was watching it. So I was not expecting to like Wrath of Man. I was intrigued by the good, I don't want to say critic reviews, but the good user ratings. User ratings are really, really high, and they all agree that this movie is good. And that made me go, oh, well, there's probably something here if divided America, can agree on its quality. And I joined the club on it. So good one. If you don't mind that sort of thing.
Yeah.
If you don't mind all manner of people just being gunned down mercilessly.
Sure.
It's cool.
All right. Next up is we have Those Who Wish Me Dead with Angelina Jolie and Forest Fires.
Oh, yeah. This is made by the guy who made Wind River, which was one of my favorite, if not my favorite movie of a few years back, with Elizabeth Olsen and Jeremy Renner. It's an incredible story. And and I believe it's roughly the same team who bring you Yellowstone on television, which is very, very hot right now.
Yep, and 1883, and
as another script that's been kicking around for a while. Action kidnapping drama taking place during a wildfire, and of course the wildfire part of it has become topical now in a way that it wasn't perhaps when this was first created. And the writer, or the guy who he gave his screenplay a sort of pass on his own, told the studio, I'll rewrite this to modernize it and bring it up to the modern sort of fires that we've been dealing with, and add my own touches. And he said, I'll even direct it if Angie will do it with me.
Yeah.
And they said, well, no problem, because she's not gonna do it. So
yeah.
But then she said yes. She needed a sort of conventional, or this is how she viewed what she needs. I don't know. Her career has been hard to figure of late. She's mostly been a mother of like 7 teenagers at this point. So the fact that we don't see her in every single movie is kind of like, it actually makes a certain amount of sense when you've kind of been following the biography for a while. But she just wanted to do a movie. Here's a good filmmaker's last movie was really good. He's on a roll. By that metric, it's super disappointing because it just isn't that great. But but by let's travel back to the late 90s when movies like this were everywhere. It's actually very enjoyable. So sure. I liked it for what it was, but it's not Wind River. Like, it just doesn't approach anything as cool as any of that.
Yeah, just so our listeners don't think that this is a Angelina Jolie fights forest fires thing. It's the forest fire is just sort of part of the is the backdrop for a teenage murder witness finds himself pursued by twin assassins in the Montana wilderness, with a survival expert tasked with protecting him, and a forest fire threatening to consume them all. So the forest fire is there, but so there's more to the plot. It's not just Angie going, get me. Angelina Jolie just going, get me planes with water. No, it's
if you really want to watch a really good movie about forest fire fighters, one came out a few years ago with Miles Teller and James Brolin, and I can't remember the name of it right now, but it was
something Jumper.
It's very good, very good film about that culture. This is not that. This is a relatively skilled lady who's has taken on the job to get away from it all, of sitting in a watchtower looking for fires in a place where spotting the fire and being able to predict its behavior is really, really important. So it's not like the job's not important, but it's work of isolation, and it's a woman who's, her interactions with this kid, for example, who's running through the woods are things don't go smoothly with them, even though they clearly kind of need each other at a certain point.
Only the Brave was that movie that came out a few years ago. And
if you want to see a movie about
the incredible true story,
if you want to see a movie about forest fire guys, who make it that their life to protect towns and things, because it used to just be a thing. Oh, the forest, blah, blah, blah. I remember when Steven Spielberg's remake of Guy Named Joe came out, Always, the big criticism against it was, it's not World War II. It's just a bunch of trees. What's the big deal? Why are we all risking our lives for this? But it is just a bunch of trees, and it's the hills, and it's the grass, and it's the water supply, and it's town after town and home after home out on the West Coast. When these fires light up, thus have we made the world, and now we kind of have to deal with it, and it's a lot to deal with. So this movie doesn't dive into that. Only the Brave really, really does. You learn a lot about it in a very entertaining way, with a lot of integrity. This is a crime thriller. The kidnapping or the attempted kidnapping or assassination, all that stuff is the story, and it's fun. These big city assassins find more than at every level. They find more than they bargained for when they go out into the country with all these well-armed and ingenious sort of mountain people. And I enjoyed that. I guess you can't really tell me, but the two guys who play the hitmen are really, really good and really good together. And it's very, very fun.
Yeah, I mean, not having seen it, I don't know.
Really, just roll down the names. They're going to be in the top.
We got Angelina Jolie. We have Nicholas Hoult.
Nicholas Hoult is one of them, and he's great. Okay.
John Bernthal, Aidan Gillen, Jake Weber. It's not going to be Tyler Perry. Nope. Tori Kittles, James Jordan, Jason Cook.
Well, I guess we've gone too far. It must be one of those other people up top. It ain't Jake Weber. It's not. It's kind of. Okay. It is Aidan Gillen, I guess, to a certain degree. Although I thought he was more of the big bad at the film. But it's Nicholas Hoult that impressed me, because he's not your usual big time movie assassin. Nick when he shows up and stuff outside of the X-Men franchise, is not your usual anything. Like he's not in it. He's not in it to deliver the cliche and take the paycheck. He really does do interesting stuff. So it's the little things, Joel. Otherwise, a very exciting sort of action thriller in and amongst the fire. The fire feels real and like a real threat.
Very cool. All right, next up is No Sudden Move with Benicio del Toro and Don Cheadle.
Steven Soderbergh,
who wants superheroes to have sex.
Let's get on it.
Yeah. But yeah, no, sudden move. A group of criminals are brought together under mysterious circumstances and have to work together to uncover what's really going on when their simple job goes completely sideways. And no, this isn't The Usual Suspects.
It isn't, but it tonally is right along the lines of that. It has a lot of period trappings. I want to say this movie takes place in the early 60s ish. So the suits are cool, the cars are cool, the guns are old fashioned, even the luggage close up.
Don Cheadle's hat.
Yeah, exactly. But John Cheadle, Benicio del Toro, this movie's really, really, really good. It was. I mean, truly, this film's nothing to scoff at. This is a really, really good movie. If it didn't end in such a sort of corny place, and if it wasn't in a season loaded with, sort of big time prestige films, this would be right up there amongst the best of the year, in my opinion. So it is one that got looked over by a lot of folks. Other than Benicio and Cheadle, and the film really does revolve around them and their different philosophies as criminals, and the fact that they're thrust into this situation together. Who else is in it? Because it's another stacked cast. It's David Harbour, John Hamm, Craig Mumsgrant, Brendan Fraser, Julia Fox, Kieran Culkin. Kieran Culkin's great in it.
Amy Seimetz.
Amy Seimetz really good in it.
Sorry.
David Harbour, obviously, he's great. This is the kind of David Harbour's sort of a star now, so I'm surprised to see him going back to playing the kind of role he played 10 years ago. But it's delightful. He was so good as those weird put upon side characters in all those films that we watched. And this is a similar type role. John Hamm's, like I said, is always good. It just depends on whether he's in a good movie or not. This is a good movie. Soderbergh wouldn't have done another crime drama or crime thriller unless he was really inspired. And he's a top flight filmmaker. So seeing him, I don't like the Ocean's films. Matter of fact, I really actively dislike those. So there's things about Soderbergh's, like, his resume that don't impress me at all. But this goes with the stuff that's really, really good. It's as good a movie as he's made in a long time. It's certainly as well made a movie as he's made in forever. And I really, really love that. It's not as good as Traffic or some of these films that are real stories of substance.
Yep.
But it's really entertaining. Again, kind of dark. Lots of headshots. Movies are super into that these days,
Sure.
But it's it's crime. They all got guns in the poster. I mean, you should know that's part of what you're getting into when you get into something like this. So.
Right.
It's very, the thing that's delightful about this is there's a real comic element to it. It's not a comedy and it's not funny.
It's
a dark crime story that has the energy of a comedy, and that really just that's something I would suspect.
I mean that is something that Soderbergh, he's good at. He's good at injecting that humor into these really it's sort of intense movies.
Yep.
So, well, very cool.
Because absurd things happen, and he lets them happen and be as absurd as they want, and that's and you really do have. Just the list, the list of bad guys: Culkin, Del Toro, and Cheadle. We've all seen all of them, just one degree or another, react to an absurd thing in a hilarious way.
Right.
Even if it's deadpan and seriously in the moment, you can just think back through their careers. So when you throw them all in a room together, magic does happen. It really does happen in that film. I was super impressed with it.
Very fun. I'm gonna check that one out.
The script is slight. The crime itself is like whatever. The ending is like, but it's so much more than the sum of its parts, which is what I like about it.
Yeah. as someone who's like we've talked about at length, I've been lucky enough to be a performer for many, many years, and one of my big influences in anything that I do is the classic sketch comedy show Mr. Show with Bob and David. So and I always think about this old sketch on Mr. Show where they're being like actors doing a like medieval thing, and Bob Odenkirk just keeps going, "I'm a big actor, I yell the loudest, blah blah blah." And so and I remember, and on the commentary he's like, "Yeah, that's basically how I approach acting." So now to see him all of these years later, being an Emmy Award, I think he's won, hasn't he? I think he's
if he didn't, it's a crime, because
I think he's
his
won for
TV show, which is wrapping up here in the next few months. That show has been the best show on TV throughout its time on TV, by a lot. And of all the things we celebrate and watch, and all the things that get talked about on blogs and in headlines and in crap little phone news service delivery systems the next day, that's the show that it almost requires that you have seen all of Breaking Bad. So that's a lot to take in if you haven't got started with it. But Better Call Saul's better than Breaking Bad by half. And Odenkirk's a huge part of that, obviously, because the show really does revolve around him. And, as a dramatic actor, he brings no history and no baggage with him where he goes, and that's refreshing. And it's because he's an improv comedian. He tells this story about when he was guest starring. There's a 70s term for you. When he was the special guest star on Charlie's Angels this week. No, when he was doing a season of Fargo with with what's his face, who plays Watson there, and Bilbo over there in England. I can't remember.
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, he's doing a scene with Freeman, and because Odenkirk's from this comedic improv-y background, they're just sitting there waiting for them to set up the lights or whatever, and he starts going, "Hey, maybe if we did this, and you could be thinking that, and blah blah." And he sort of did this old like it wasn't Martin Freeman, like it was David Cross sitting there or whatever. And to hear David tell the story, it's funny because he really goes off and he does this monologue about all this shit that he says. And Martin Freeman at the end of it goes, "Never tell me how to act again," and got up and walked out of the room. And if you know Freeman, you can hear him saying that.
Yeah.
And Bob's like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
But the point is, no preconceived notions about how to do this stuff.
Yep.
And it's more than that. He's a naturally talented in front of the camera, performer, but in a really different sort of way. And this is like, what if you took a guy like that, has no conventional leading man qualities at all, and dropped him into the plot of John Wick, and what you get is this. And
and that's the movie. And the movie is Nobody. The movie's called Nobody. Haven't mentioned that yet. And so we have Bob Odenkirk as essentially just a regular old family man, docile family man, and he reveals his true character after his house gets burgled by two petty thieves, which coincidentally leads him into a bloody war with a Russian crime boss.
I don't know how many movies there are with this essential plot out there. A lot. Yeah. This is, I'll with respect to John Wick fans, this is the best one because it's just not what you expect. It's super entertaining. Again, there's lots of room for comedy in and amongst all the carnage. Normally, I think that's a difficult balancing act, but here's a couple of movies that really get it kind of spot on right. Mm-hmm. No Sudden Move could have been whatever. And it was still, whatever tone they wanted to take, it would have worked because it's a good enough thing. This is nothing here about nobody. And so this had to have the laughs in it for it to work, or for it to be even tolerable, really, because the violence is really crazy intense.
Yep.
But I loved it. And I really do think it's because it's not just because, everybody worked real hard on it and did a good job. But Odenkirk, just something different about him. He doesn't belong in this movie, and that's part of the joy of it.
Well, and the story behind it, and I've heard Bob talk about this on different podcasts and in different interviews, is there was a home invasion. He was the victim. He and his family were the victim of a home invasion, and that's where all of this started. Was him just that feeling of helplessness and impotence, and then frustrated by how it was handled by the authorities, and then he was like, that's kind of where it all started. Is he had this idea and he thought, well, and he pitched it to some people, and then they were like, well, are you talking about you being in it? And he's like, oh, probably not, no. And then he was like, me. Yeah, and then he's like, well, maybe I could do it. Maybe I could do it. And then he needs
to be him or somebody like him for it to work. It's the magic of it. I mean, there's no point in spoiling it. It is what we just said it was, and it's delightful. It has a song in it called "Life's a Bitch," this old electric blues song from the '80s. It made me go buy a CD because it's so well used and sounds so good in the movie that I was like, I gotta have that. Whatever that is, I gotta have that.
Yeah.
And I just had so much fun with that film. So, and that's what it's supposed to be. It is supposed to be fun, and it is about the catharsis of revenge in a rather goofy way. Even though, again, really, really super violent movie, but
Yep, I love Bob. I will never not love him. He's big part.
But this film's good enough that it would have worked without him. It definitely does need, it could have worked with Woody Harrelson or something. But it doesn't work with Jason Statham. That's the smart thing that these studio guys, when they were reading his idea or hearing his pitch, understood immediately. This nobody guy has to be believable as that. You have to look right past him on the train, and Bob can do that. And yet when it comes time for him to kick ass, you wouldn't think, based on what you've seen of him to date, but he can do that too, and it's delightful. It's great.
Not to, I mean, and I don't want to derail this, but again, as someone who lives, eat, and breathes Mr. Show with Bob and David as much as I do, to see Bob Odenkirk's career turn out the way it has, and to see David Cross in like Station 11 on HBO be so good, it just cracks me up. Let's move on.
And now that Better Call Saul is wrapped, they're getting back together again.
They are Paramount. They're going to do a show for Paramount
and
Plus.
Don't ever tell Martin Freeman how to act for real.
Don't. That's And,
unless you want like a chill to roll down your spine, the likes of which you've never felt before in your life.
Sure. All right.
So there's lots of lessons here that this is.
Yeah. And hey, on the movie show with Joel and Ryan, we are nothing if not educators. We want to make sure that you learn the lessons. All right, so let's move on to some crime dramas. And first up, we have.
Hey,
Sherry.
You want to hear a totally unrelated non sequitur story that will make you laugh?
As long as it's fast.
It is. It's fast.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with anything, though. It's just I just thought of it, and if I don't tell it, maybe it'll never get told on the show. It's worth telling. When they were starting out to make the Big Red One, Lee Marvin showed up on set with Mark Hamill and Robert Carradine and Bobby DiCiccio and stuff, and his unit that they spend the entire movie with as commanding officer, and he didn't say a word to any of them. They were all excited to meet him, all that. And then they were sitting in the car driving to the first sort of location work that they were going to do. And Lee Marvin said, "Hey, which one of you is Carradine?" And Robert Carradine said, "That's me." He goes, "Yeah? F you, Carradine." And that's all he said on the whole trip out there or whatever. And then as they sort of got used to each other while making this, 3-hour war epic movie that took a few months to make, Robert said, "Hey, Lee, why'd you say that to me in the car?" "Huh? F you, Carradine. I mean, why me? You had the only name I recognized."
Well, there you go.
That's true story.
Yep. Well, that story, and it's a good story. That story may be told again.
We're trying to do a lot of movies here. I shouldn't be just telling unrelated stories.
But we have an idea of a show coming up that I know. I think it was Michael pitched or something like that, and Big Red One might feature in that.
Oh, okay, cool.
For me. Anyway, so let's move on.
Those bastards watch a 3-hour war epic. They'll love that.
I love Big Red One though. Oh man, it's such a good film.
I don't have a problem with that. I've already seen it 4 times.
Yeah. I haven't watched it in years, so that would be exciting for me.
Well, have you ever seen the reconstruction version? You haven't really, have you?
No, I bet I haven't then.
So that's your homework assignment.
Well, there you go. Awesome. All right. Next up, we're going to do some crime dramas, and it's Tom Holland, not as Spider-Man, but as Cherry. Cherry drifts from college dropout to army medic in Iraq, anchored only by his true love, Emily. But after returning from the war with PTSD, his life spirals into drugs and crime as he struggles to find his place in the world.
This is based on a book, sort of one of those autobiographical drama books where the exact events are somewhat metaphorical, but it's still based on this guy's life experiences. And as a book where it's like, oh, you're this awkward kid, you're a soldier, you're a drug addict, you're a bank robber, that's probably an interesting read. As a film, man, this film's just hated by everybody who saw it. I couldn't bring myself to hate it because there's poetry to the writing, and clearly it feels clear that that's from the book. But it's just a story like this rundown story that it has a lot of absurdity in it, but it's also heavy and tragic and awful, and it's also beautiful in the way it's written, and it just feels pretentious, and it tries your patience in that way. I like pretentiousness. I mean, I think we could really use more pretentiousness in cinema these days. Go for it. So I didn't want to hate it, but it's just, it's a chore to get through as a film, because it's just so dark and so sad, and everybody's so wrecked. And
yeah,
you know what I mean? And I'm not sure what's missing, I guess. What's the missing element? It's told with great care by the Russo brothers from MCU fame, who are really excited to be making a movie that's something different.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm sure Holland's approach to the stuff is the same, but it's hard to explain. Even when him and his girlfriend come together, you're just like, oh, you guys are doomed. You could just feel the weight of that over the thing from the word go. It does have some interesting bits and sequences in it, some fun supporting characters and stuff. Interesting view of war, really interesting dive into the real economics of being a drug addict, which is not something that Hollywood deals with very much. So it's not trash at all. It's just it's almost an impossible to enjoy film. Yeah. So, and that has to be said when you talk about it. So that's my take.
Next film is a movie that had one of the most enjoyable trailers I'd seen in a while. And it's Rosamund Pike in I Care a Lot. A crooked legal guardian who drains the savings of her elderly ward meets her match when a woman she tries to swindle turns out to be more than she first appears.
This is ugly. Rosamund, wow. It's a really great role for her. I mean, it would be nice to see her play some nice lady at some point here. Before it's too late and they never let her do that again, because she's good at that too. But this is just, she's just a high functioning, high class con artist who they go hunting through hospital records and other ways for rich old people who they can essentially incarcerate and then exploit economically until they die. That's the ugliest, meanest spirited thing that you could possibly be wrapped up in. I mean, and the film adequately demonstrates the real horror of it in the very first scene. but it also shows that she's not your usual, this guy comes up to her after this hearing goes bad for him and threatens her. And she just kind of like, her being nonplussed by that, and her explaining just how she could destroy this person. And then her saying, but I'm going to take mercy on you now because you've obviously lived in a world where you could puff your chest out and threaten me and things might work out for you and I might get scared. Like if the monologue is like, oh my God.
Wow. And
the whole film continues like that. And it's very comedic. It's because it has Peter Dinklage and Diane Wiest are the other main players in it.
Mm-hmm.
And who's her partner? Peter Dinklage and Diane Wiest do not surprise you because they're both brilliant and they both show up and do their thing to a plum. But she's got a partner she works with.
Just looking to make sure I pronounce it correctly. I can't find anything here on the pronunciation of it, but
We're sorry everybody for pronunciations.
I'm gonna go with Itza Gonzalez.
She's been in a bunch of stuff and hasn't really been good in much of anything because Hollywood has a certain use for an actor of her type, unfortunately. And most movies you really do get cast to type. She's extraordinary in this film, so it just shows you, man, with the right material, anybody, if they lean into it, can be awesome. So and I of all people need to remember that, because I really do sit here show after show sort of judging these performances, and if you put a string of performances together in roles that I think are sort of unworthy of the screen, I get really, really hard on actors. And she was somebody who, before I saw this, I would have said, who? Oh, her, yeah, whatever. She's great in it. It's really, really substantive stuff. It's just, this film's just surprising. There's a surprise around every single corner of this film, and it maintains that all the way to the end. And that's what's more joyful than watching a weird crime / comedy without just intense violence in it. There's a little bit of that. That's what these other guy movies have going for them. This one, it isn't ultimately about that. It's about stuff that's much, much darker. Matters of the human soul. And it takes all that on, and it constantly subverts expectations, and it is a bait and switch of a film tonally in a way that's just miraculous. So I can't say enough of it. It's shot simply and plainly. It's just sort of a low budget movie. There's not too much special about it cinematically, but on the page and in the eyes of these characters and in their lives and in the words that they say and when they choose to say what, just delightful film. Say the name of it again so that they remember to watch it.
I care a lot. And I will say, just sort of scanning through here, exactly everything that you're saying is also the reasons why some people hated it. So,
sure.
So I just, to me,
we told you the premise. It's ugly as sin. Truly. Whose side are you on in this thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Chris Messina's. Yeah.
This is the exception that proves the rule. It shows that your allegiances, even when they're flopping back and forth and all over the place, it doesn't matter if something has real meaning behind it and real thematic depth to it. And this has that. And it's not to mention that I said it's a surprise around every corner. I don't know how to. When's the last time you could say that about a movie? I don't remember the last time I watched a movie where that was true.
Sure.
What? Oh my God. I mean, you say it like 5 times. That's a lot. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
I'm impressed. That's not easy to, movies don't get me to do that. I've always said, I'm glad that I can turn my movie, because Joel will tell you this. We do the movie show because I really like movies. Even Cherry, which is the only one I've really ripped on. I even like that. Sort of. I liked it for what it was.
Yeah.
I avoid movies that I'm not going to like for what it is. I just don't watch those. So we don't talk about them. This, I didn't know if I would like it. It's a dark comedy. It's certainly, Joel will tell you, the trailer, it sells it totally as a dark comedy.
Yeah, it totally sells it as a dark
comedy.
And
it is, and it's more than that. I'll stop gushing about it, but I like I say, the filmmaking itself was great. You can't discount that, but that part of it wasn't special, but everything else about it, as a kind of straight to streaming, lean and mean crime thriller, it's tip top.
Yeah. All right, so this next film is a crime drama, but it's I thought it, with all the talk of the multiverse and everything that's been going on, we talk about the multiverse with Marvel films and everything going on. I would have thought that this one would have gotten, and in DC films, I would have thought that this would have gotten a lot more play, because this is a movie that takes place in the multiverse, where after Superman dies, his parents go, while they're grieving over the death of their son Superman, they set out to find their only grandson, and that's Let Him Go with Kevin Costner and Diane Lane. Am I getting
that's
that
a long
right?
way of saying those were the people who played Superman's parents in Man of Steel.
Yep. No.
It might be, Joel, it might be the longest way of saying that. Actually.
I think it is the longest, most, and with no payoff.
You broke the world record, my friend.
There's
it happened here on the show. Everybody was here to see it.
There you go.
Good work.
Was a payoff that's totally not worth it.
This film's so dark and tragic and sad and depressing that a lead in like that really doesn't do it justice, unfortunately. But what I really like about it is this is just grandma and grandpa, really. It's hot Diane Lane and hot Kevin Costner, movie star grandpa and grandma, but they don't like Bob Odenkirk. They don't just suddenly become like some unstoppable super spy assassin person, and rescue this kid. They're just these old people who are compelled to not give up on this because it's the way we're wired as people.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
imagine your son marries a girl that you don't approve of, and they have a kid, and you slowly start to work it out. Then he's taken from you in a tragic accident. She just takes the kid and goes back to her family, and they just happen to be a bunch of psychotic hill people. And what can you do? You can't do much. And that's a really awful feeling that this film sort of keeps pounding home all the way to the finish line. But Costner, Diane Lane, is Jeffrey Donovan in this again?
No, I don't see Jeffrey. Oh yeah, there he is, Jeffrey Donovan. Yep, he's in this.
He's but in by order of appearance, that really does make credits tricky. No offense to all you people who played the gas station attendant early in the film, but we need to get you back down to the bottom so we can get to the famous people as quick as possible. Like I said, Jeff Donovan's an interesting, for a guy who looks just like a conventional TV action star, which is what he is, sort of. He's interesting. He's an interesting dude. This is an interesting family. It's a horrendously dark and miserable experience. But I go to the movies for that.
Yeah.
I want a movie to take me to a place that I don't want to go on my real life. That's what movies are for. That's why we watch horror movies around here, because I don't really like horror movies in general. I'm not a horror fan. Like I told poor Michael when he was wanting to do some horror show with us, and I was like,
he's pitched
well, here's
many,
where it
many
starts with
shows,
me, man. There are no good Friday the 13th movies. And you could tell it was like I punched him in the face.
It's like you kicked his beloved puppy,
because he sits around and compares and contrasts all 18 of them or whatever, and figures out which his best ones are. And you can do that with them. They all still suck. There's movies that suck. They all fall below the line. So that's where I come from. I don't like any of them. They all blow. And
I mean, I believe.
Where do you go from there?
I believe, and I say this, and we've talked about this with Michael, so I'm not telling tales out of school. But Michael has actually uttered the sentence, things like, Heather Langenkamp should have been considered for an Academy Award.
Right.
For her work, so it's like that. That's like
just for her work in Just the 10 of Us, right?
Yeah,
Obviously.
right. But he's someone who loves horror. I mentioned that only to talk about how much he loves horror.
And I'm someone who doesn't. That said, we found a lot of common ground where we can talk about these things, which I'm very grateful for. And I do like being put through the ringer. I just like actually being put through the ringer. If you're just effing around, and it's just how many clever ways can you think to kill people? And horror movies go through. This isn't a horror movie, but it's horrific.
Yeah,
and it makes you feel the same way as a really good dark horror movie does. It just takes the life out of you. But that's an experience that was real. When you can really, through empathy, manifest those feelings in a person that's just sitting here across the room witnessing it, you've done something. And but I just let him go. It looks innocuous enough. A couple of old aging movie stars. Maybe there's a sort of Western cowboy aspect to it. Who knows? Well, let's try this, honey.
Yeah, it's the 60s. It's grandparents in the 60s going after their kid. That should be a fun time.
It's dark. Sorry about all the horror sidetrack there, but it's horrific. It made me feel like a good horror movie does.
Yep.
But it made me feel like a good horror movie does. So if you're inclined to just feel gutted by something in the safe confines of your own home, there's the movie for you.
And also, it's important. I do feel because I don't want it to seem like we were making fun of Michael. It's Michael's love of horror movies and his love of movies. The way he loves them is part of why we love him.
You guys, I mean, unless this is your first show or something, you guys have seen him come on here. He's a delight. We really do.
A question for another time. On a movie show with Joel and Ryan, we'll have to talk. I would love to hear your thoughts, and now's not the time to do this. Are we going through a Nick Cage-assance? But that's a question for another time, because we have a Nick Cage movie up next, playing a truffle hunter who lives alone in the Oregon wilderness, and he has to return to his past in Portland in search of his beloved foraging pig after she is kidnapped. So this is a kidnapping movie, a pig-napping movie.
It is a pig-napping movie. This was on several best movie of the year lists for the end of the year. Many. So because I wasn't really, I read this synopsis and I thought, it feels like a cheesy, revenge movie or whatever. It does follow the structure of that exactly. Crazy hill person, with a beloved pet, has the pet kidnapped and goes on a rampage, we assume, but spoiler alert for Pig, the rampage never comes. This film goes to really unexpected places. Again, it follows the structure that there's an investigation. There's a sidekick who may know more than he's letting on. He's fantastic, whoever that actor is. The young guy.
I don't know.
But you need a talking sidekick if Nick Cage is only going to say one syllable lines for the entire film. And normally I don't approve of that. That's an easy cop out. But if you every once in a while, like maybe not in every movie, but every once in a while you get Billy Zane in that role, or you get somebody who just there brings lots of amazing humanity to it, and it makes the thing fly. And this kid does that, and that is wonderful.
Are we talking about Amir or Alex Wolff as Amir?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So Alex Wolff. Good. I'm glad we could.
Yeah.
Give him some credit.
He's great in it, and Nick is great. He undercooks everything, but he's been doing that. Nick didn't suddenly become a bad actor. He just became an actor that Hollywood didn't want for its A-list stuff, who wanted to keep acting. This happened to Bruce Willis. It's happened to a bunch of people. Even that said, take the worst Nick Cage movie up against the worst Bruce Willis movie of this era, and it's a million times better. Nicolas Cage is really, really good, and he's really great in this. And so, it is sort of a renaissance of his, but where did he go exactly? Remember, Keanu Reeves was in the weeds for a while, suffering and not being able to do anything good. The same thing happened to Ben Affleck. So he started directing his own movies, basically. it happens to everybody. You know, it's all how you deal with it. Some guys deal with it by just working really, really hard.
I gotta say, I love this tagline. The tagline for the movie is, we don't get a lot of things to really care about. And
that gets to the heart of it.
I really like that.
Yeah, it gets to the heart of it.
Wow.
This is absolutely in the crime. It's certainly a crime, but this is in the crime drama category because it really is a drama. It's not even very violent at all compared to the rest of these, anyway.
Well, yeah, very cool. Pig.
The violence is emotional and it's real. It's real, but it isn't. You know, it isn't somebody stole Keanu Reeves' dog and now he gets to kill like 7,000 Armenians. You know, it just isn't that at all. Even though with just reading that synopsis, you could, I know where this is going. It's the opposite of Nobody in a delightful way. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I didn't love it, but I really, really liked it. And I was cynical about it when I sat down and watched it. So.
Yeah, I gotta admit, I think I was kind of cynical here, pulling it, you know, when we started talking about it. But
it's not hard. It's easy to be. But Nick Cage starred in Joe. He starred in Frozen Land or whatever, Frozen Earth, or I can't remember, the Frozen something. He has shown up in films that you haven't seen where he's been excellent and they have been awesome. So this didn't shock me that, here Nick Cage did a good movie at all, because he's been doing them right along this whole time. This is the one that broke through, I think, to modern critics, and they really, really liked it, propped it up. So shout out to them.
Wow.
Because I added this, and what was the movie we talked about last week? Zola. I added them at the last second because I like, shit. I mean, if I read this on another top 20 list, decided not to watch it, then who am I? I gotta get this. Yeah, so, and it was worth it. They were great. It's good.
Yeah. All right. Next, this IMDb for our plots. We usually use the IMDb quick plot synopses for our things, and most of the time they're great. Sometimes they're like this though, for the card counter.
Yeah.
Redemption is the long game in Paul Schrader's The Card Counter. Told with Schrader's trademark cinematic intensity, the revenge thriller tells the story of an ex-military interrogator turned gambler haunted by the ghosts of his past.
That synopsis should have been an ex-military turned card player is haunted by the ghosts of his past. All that other crap at the beginning, the pun and the talking about the filmmaker in the synopsis.
Yep. Yeah.
Just if you want a little writing assignment, whoever wrote that, what you think about the filmmaker, nobody cares about that. I know, here I am talking, I'm about to talk about what I think about Paul Schrader, so I'm being a bit of a hypocrite. But as a synopsis, that is not where that goes.
It's a very bad synopsis. Yeah.
We recommend you start your own podcast and really get maybe some nuanced opinion out there.
Yeah, there you go.
That works for us. So yeah, that's a terrible one.
But it's got
pun, unforgivable pun at the beginning of this complicated and weird movie. Paul Schrader, most famous for writing Taxi Driver and Hardcore, American Gigolo. What's the one with Nick Nolte where he goes crazy? That's an incredible film. He did a movie with Ethan Hawke a couple years ago. Affliction. Good Lord.
Affliction, yep.
So merciless look at the human psyche. That's what all of these are. They're merciless. They're just rough and tumble films, but they're real human stories that show a real ugly side of us, and show it's just all these guys are really the one thing that they, maybe Richard Gere and American Gigolo aside, since that movie's about the rich and famous, but this is as close as that comes, where this guy, what does he say in it? Oscar Isaac, he says, I don't like gambling big. I like gambling small. He goes from town to town, casino to casino, wins enough to live on and to put a nest egg away for when he loses his skill to do this. not upsetting any particular casino or any particular crime family inordinately. And when definitely, absolutely not, even though he's skilled enough to do it and known in these circles, definitely not going to these big poker tournaments where he could make enough to sit out a couple of years.
Yeah.
He just doesn't do that. Well, for various very convoluted and really well-written dramatic reasons, he is suddenly motivated to do that. And this feels like it's going to be the story of him, climbing that wall. Like we've seen movies like this before where that sort of happens. And but it's not a poker movie in a satisfying way at all. The poker itself is played down. But this guy has a shot at a chosen family. And for someone who's lived his life, even though he doesn't come out and say it, and it's just not even a thing the movie really addresses directly, that's what you feel. Suddenly he's connecting with people. He's the guy who connects with nobody. He's connecting with people. And it's this thing that changes him. And you just have to decide at the end whether that was worth it or whether it was all for the better, because life's cruel, especially when money is involved. It's cruel. And, I don't know if you've seen any Paul Schrader movies. I mean, you probably have some sense of where it's going. I'm trying to think of one that has a happy ending, and it's not coming to mind.
That's a very good question. Let's see. Nope, not that one. Not that one.
The closest is Taxi Driver, right?
Yeah,
that guy,
possibly.
They're all like, I mean, even though it's bullshit, they're all like, dude, you're a hero or whatever. By the end of the movie, like, that is literally the best outcome that could have happened in that story.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of the end of City Hall. Did that have? No, that was pretty. That was bleak. Not. Yeah, Mosquito Coast. No. Raging Bull. Nope.
Yeah. So Paul, he's a certain kind of storyteller, and like we've said, he's an artist in a true sense. There's a Soderbergh type artist who's very interested in form and function and loves to put themselves into any different kind of form to inspire themselves to tell the story. Then there's guys like John Boorman, and we've talked about several of them on the show, Schrader certainly included, where they just tell the same story over and over and over and over and over again, just with different people and different setting. But the point is always ends up being about the same. And Oscar Isaac's extraordinary in this. I didn't see the Oscar nominations if he's nominated for an Oscar, but he should have been. Michael, you'll appreciate that. I don't know whose name I would pluck out of there, but he's so good in it. He's so good in it. And it's just complicated human story that I love, and it's sort of weird world that we don't get to see the behind the scenes of very often, and here it is. So I thought the Card Counter was just fantastic, but I'm predisposed to Schrader's work. I like I said, I don't mind feeling bad at the end of the movie. It starts there. If you've given up on that for good, and I understand why you might in these times that we live in, but you got to find your way back to being tolerant of that every few movies or so, because some of the best ones out there, that's how they make you feel, and this one's no exception. So check it out.
Let's see, award. Trying to see if he's nominated. I don't think he is. I'm pretty sure he's not.
It's the kind of performance where he might be.
Whatever. All right. Next up is so we're gonna leave crime dramas now, and we are gonna go to some smaller. We're calling Ryan's calling this low fidelity sci-fi. So
lo-fi sci-fi.
Lo-fi sci-fi. And we're going to start off with The Colony.
We're going to whip through these. Colony got some good buzz because it's got a really good look. It's shot, I want to say, in Germany, like coastal Germany, which is a weird place you don't see on screen. It's trying to show a sort of post-apocalyptic Earth It's really cooking along when it's just these two astronauts trying to survive back on Earth. Read the synopsis.
Yep. It is set in the distant future. A female astronaut shipwrecked on the long decimated Earth must decide the fate of the wasteland's remaining populace.
It is not important that she's a female astronaut. Okay. Other than that, I approve of that synopsis. Because it doesn't really reveal where the movie's going. Where the movie goes is ultimately not super satisfying. So it depends. With a film like this, it really depends if you're like me and you just astronauts trapped on a planet. Okay. I'll watch it. I don't care who's in it. I don't care how bad it looks. I don't care if the trailer looks like it costs $9. You made an astronaut movie. I'm gonna show up and watch it. This was better than the average one. Like, these guys are going somewhere. You got a sense of it, both in the writing and definitely in the visual storytelling. They've got they have a lot of advantages. They have a lot of real life stuff that they were given access to because of where they shot this, and because I think the people who helped them make it, the government, tax breaks and stuff, like, they were really excited to have a film like this being made in their country, and it plays pretty good. It's got some good actors in it and stuff, but it is sort of, you think it's going to be a survival movie, and it becomes a very talky, sort of philosophical, like, what do we talk about early in the show? IO. It's a bigger movie than that, but it gets down to that, the force of wills thing of ideas, and what's our future gonna be.
Sure. All right, so let's move on to the next one. Is Voyagers. Colin Farrell, Lily Rose Depp, Ty Sheridan.
Ty Sheridan and Lily Rose Depp, really, really good. This is Lord of the Flies in space. I hate to trot that out, but these are a bunch of genetically perfect, raised in an incubator, and they came out, they like aged very quickly for this mission, and they're the future of humanity. They're in a seed ship flying to a new planet because Earth is crumbling to dust. We've seen and heard all this before, but they're inquisitive, and they start messing around with their chemical makeup, and they're geniuses, so they just can't help but make a mess of things when they ultimately end up lacking a certain amount of guidance. It's a beautiful movie for a commercial sci-fi storytelling. It's really pretty, but people mostly hated it. I couldn't bring myself to hate it because like I said, I like these kinds of things. But yeah, it's ugly. It's ugly when one side gangs up on the other side, and it's sad when the alpha dog in some situation becomes overpowering to people, still sort of resorting to their better natures. Lord of the Flies is an ugly tale. It starts with the premise that we as people are bad and left out in the wilderness unsupervised. This is the path we're always going to go down. This film follows through that, and I don't know that that's true. I don't think history has shown that, to be honest, but it is interesting, and it does have some good performances, some really cool set design and special effects to go along with it. So I won't completely condemn it, but I do understand why people hate it. It's unpleasant. Ultimately it feels like a space fantasy where the fantasy is just it's been replaced by harsh, ugly reality. And in fact, that's not trending for today's entertainment dollar, I don't think.
All right, next up is Settlers. We've gone from Voyagers, now they found a place, and now they're settling. Settlers. The mankind's earliest settlers on the Martian frontier do what they must to survive the cosmic elements and each other.
This is super. One location, 5 actors.
Oh yeah, look at that.
No special effects. The film's tinted sort of orange, so you get the feeling you're on Mars. But other than that, there's some neat set design and costume design, and there's some stuff. But this is an indie, and I just want to stress that enough because the the posters and the marketing for it trying to suggest that there's, that there's more to it than that. And it just isn't. It's just a small made, simple, independent film. And that's also about rather dark themes about who are we as survivors, and what are we willing to compromise in ourselves as survivors, and what aren't we, and which is right and wrong. I defy you to watch Settlers and have adequate answers to any of these questions. So it explores them all, but it leaves you feeling like, ugh, what?
Yeah.
But that is what it sets out to do. So again, if you can comb through all the 1-star reviews of Settlers, you'll find some 7 and 8-star reviews in there by people who watch these kind of movies like me and enjoy them for what they are. But don't be tricked by it. It is a film whose distributors have not played fair with audiences. Again, they really are selling it as much more than what it is. And it's right. If it wasn't on Mars and it was just on a farm in the 1920s, I wouldn't have watched it. So, but it could be just on a farm in the 1920s with a cast of 5, and it'd be the exact same story, pretty much. The isolation of Mars makes it a little trickier and makes its themes like crystallize a little tighter than it would if you could just go to the next town, or if there was anywhere else to go. There isn't in this situation, and that makes things tricky, and it allows you to explore things in an extreme way, even though it's the furthest thing from an extreme movie.
Sure. Johnny Lee Miller, that would probably be the name that people would know from
Big this. Johnny Lee Miller fans, the most angry of all at Settlers.
Ooh, okay. All right. So the Voyagers find a place and then they settle, but then some of them want to leave. But what if someone joins it that they weren't expecting? They become a stowaway. So our next film is, that was my bad. I was trying to do a
still better than that guy who did the card counter one. maybe read the synopsis of Stowaway, because I'm not sure what you just said there.
Stowaway is that's Anna Kendrick, Daniel Day Kim, Shamir Anderson. A 3-person crew on a mission to Mars faces an impossible choice when an unplanned passenger jeopardizes the lives of everyone on board.
All right. If you've ever read any short fiction or watched any Twilight Zone or Outer Limits episodes, you could probably predict what that choice is. This film's the first one that bends over backwards, at least, to scientifically explain why this is actually a problem. The other films and stories don't do a very good job of that, but the idea is the same. It's a weird set of circumstances have arisen where the science of the hard math of interplanetary space travel is the thing that is the overpowering thing that's going to guide our choices here, not are the better parts of our human nature. It's a good cast, really good special effects. For a modest film, there's a lot of good outside the spaceship scenes, which I was not expecting, because this kind of film, it's usually like, okay, space looks pretty good. Yeah, that little thing going through space, that looks pretty good. But they're not going to put the people out there. This movie does in a great way. Anna Kendrick in particular.
Yeah. I should have mentioned the fourth member with Toni Collette. Toni Collette's in that. So
our leader, she's fourth in that list because she's and Toni Collette in the thing, but she's really would be, by that metric, we would call her second cast by being the fourth. And we talked about that a little last week. It's really complicated. We'll do a whole show about it if you want, but you're going to have to ask for that show. I'm not going to be putting it out there and then have everybody go, what are you talking about that stuff for? Because then that's not happening. So, but in this movie, it is apropos. Toni Collette, they didn't let her be the big action star, but, well, can I be the commander? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, I'm the commander. Nice. It's like when they had to get George Takei away from William Shatner in the Star Trek movies, and they were like, well, you're not really going to be in this movie, but you're going to be captain of another ship. Captain Sulu, what do you think about that, man? And he was like, yeah, I'll take it.
I'll swing by.
Everybody, let's get this one done and get away from these people for the next couple decades. It worked. They gave him some plot agency and got him the hell away from the rest of the cast. Perfect. That was literally the solution that the writers and creators had to solve there, because those guys would not be in the same room with each other anymore. So this is different. This is and Toni Collette's great. You know, it's all these four people are principal actors are all really, really good. But this is an Outer Limits episode. It's an hour and a half, sort of stretched out Outer Limits episode. This is the classic. Well, if this just would have been 40 minutes, I'm sure you guys say this about the movie show with Joel and Ryan all the time. Yeah. It would have been great, you know, but it's just too long. 2 hours is too long.
Yep.
But I liked it for a streaming sci-fi morality tale with some great design. Again, great design and effects. It delivers on the modest science fiction where all the budget went up on the screen kind of thing. This really does feel like a living, breathing spaceship. And some of the action that takes place outside the ship is really exciting and cool. So,
very cool.
So yeah, I liked it. I don't love it. I mean, I watch all of these. There's 100 of these, and some of them are better and some of them are worse. This is right kind of in the running, you know.
Sure. All right. Well, next up we have Reminiscence with everybody's favorite Hugh Jackman.
And Rebecca Ferguson.
And Tandy Newton.
Reprising their roles from that stupid circus musical movie. Rebecca Ferguson even sings in her own voice more than once in this, which is lovely. Wow. She can really sing. She couldn't have sung that crap in the Barnum thing, but
the Greatest Showman,
yeah. But she can sing. It's these sultry film noir light jazz tunes that she sings, and it's awesome.
Well, there you go.
And you can see why Hugh Jackman would be like, I'm going to fall in love with that, and it's going to ruin my whole life right from the get-go. It's film noir. It's a super complicated story, so I'm not going to get into it. What's to like about it is it's high concept. Read the synopsis, will you?
Nick Bannister, a PI. He's a private investigator of the mind. Navigates the alluring world of the past when his life is changed by a new client, May. A simple case becomes an obsession after she disappears, and he fights to learn the truth about her.
It's written by the showrunner for Westworld.
Yeah,
and
Lisa Joy.
It's that and directed by the other guy who was in charge of Westworld.
I have here that it was written and directed by Lisa Joy.
Okay, makes sense. Okay, but either way, it's Jonathan Nolan. She's like Christopher Nolan's brother. She's like a protege of him, and it has this twisty, turny, but it's hard to explain. What's a cyberpunk, guy investigating people's memories, blah blah blah. It's got all this science fiction trappings in it, but what it really is this PI falls in love with the chick, and his obsession drives him mad as he tries to investigate her story. That is as old as film noir itself. So I loved it. It's beautiful. It's really, really smart. It's really smart. It's like Westworld. It's way too smart. It's way smarter than us in a demonstrable way. And that can be off-putting when you're watching that. You can be like, what? And your reaction to that, and mine's no different, tends to be, wait a minute, you're not smart, you're stupid. And so there's sort of this backlash that happens in your mind. You're just, wait, this is boring. I thought it was very clever and very good, but it is not very involving. These characters are rather standoffish. Tandy's great. She's got her moments. Hugh is great. And this kind of burned out PI falls in love with this dream goddess who shouldn't be in a place like this kind of woman. And Rebecca's great at being mysterious, but sharing some real human pain with you that's underneath that. These people are all hiding stuff from each other. And 2 hours of that, no matter how well lit, can be frustrating for a modern audience. And then when the payoff comes, when it's super complicated and and doesn't land with a thud, it sort of disappears and floats gently away. It's like, it's not, it doesn't have a big Blade Runner ending where they're chasing each other around and it's mano y mano. Like, it's just not like that at all. It's a movie of the mind. So I thought it was really good, but it's not going to be for everybody. It just isn't. If you didn't like the second season of Detective, what is it? Something Detective, True Detective. Or you didn't like the second season of Westworld. Like, if you thought these things were way too complicated and that you started not to care, and when you started not to care, you started completely not to follow it. Don't see this.
Avoid this one. Because
it's just like that. It's cooler the more you think about it, but you really got to be willing to do a little bit of the work yourself. I enjoy that kind of thing a lot, but not everybody does.
I should have mentioned that we have moved out of the realm of lo-fi sci-fi and now
into hi-fi sci-fi.
Into hi-fi sci-fi.
Yeah.
So
let's get moving.
That's it. So next up is Anthony Mackie in Outside the Wire.
I've picked up the pace here, and some of these aren't even worth talking about much. So
Anthony
Mackie plays a android.
He's a drone. In the near future, a drone pilot sent into a war zone finds himself paired with a top secret android officer on a mission to stop a nuclear attack. Interesting android character, huge budget, lots of shootouts. So it's military sci-fi, I guess. Yeah.
Some interesting things going on between the two misfit guys, the android. Yeah. He's a complicated android. He's like sort of worthy of the Alien franchise and what is his deal and what's he doing and what's he thinking. And it is a movie that's sort of about that. It's about warfare in the world of AI, where the computers are making a lot of these decisions, and your feelings don't matter in those scenarios. They're not even accounted for. They so don't matter that they don't even enter them into the equation. They're left out completely. And what does that mean? And is that good for us? And how? This film, it doesn't have the whole, yes, we've decided. I'll just ruin it for the ending. This never happens. They never say, yes, we've decided Earth would be better out without humanity and we're taking over now. It doesn't have that moment in it, but it does in a more realistic way explore that idea that the machines are in it for themselves at a certain point, even if they're still following the directives that they're supposed to be helping us. Their ideas about that might be different than us. And then what do we do? Our main character in this has to decide, and it's interesting. But for such a big, expensive movie, it's not. There's not enough there to really justify any of it. It is just a combat movie, and you got to be into combat movies and not science fiction, I think, to truly enjoy it.
Sure.
So, and I'm not super into combat movies. I'm super into android movies, but. So it left me a little cold, but it didn't suck. It was okay. It's, again, a very, very poorly reviewed film. So take that for what it's worth. The audiences didn't like it. They showed up for something they showed up for, I don't know what, some Anthony Mackie.
Yeah. Lots of
superhero vehicle or something. Yeah. Anyway, this is the furthest thing in the world from that. Even the combat is dry and believable, and it's all, so.
All right. Well, next up we have Chiwetel Ejiofor and Mark Wahlberg in Infinite. A man discovers that his hallucinations are actually visions of past lives.
Okay.
Ooh.
This one's where we draw the line. This one really is as dumb as it seems by the time it's over. It's exciting. It's very high budget. It's got a cool car chase in it. It's got this weird 3 different people play the same soul throughout. I don't really want to ruin everything, but the problem is one of the people who play them is Mark Wahlberg, and you can't make a movie like this and be like, oh, I know Mark Wahlberg. And I think Wahlberg's been in a few good things. Like he's really good in Lovely Bones, and it's not like he sucks. He's really good in that those Peter Berg movies, not all of them, but the Behind Enemy Lines one and the Patriot Day and
sure.
and even the terrible oil leak one. He's like pretty good in that, like Working Class Stiff or whatever, but tortured, like, and it's weird because in Total Recall, like Schwarzenegger really does this pretty well because Schwarzenegger's fun. When Schwarzenegger doesn't know what's going on, he's at his best because he's like us then. And he's like, hey, what is going on? If I'm not me, then who the hell am I? That's fun. We're like, yeah, explain this shit to us.
Yeah.
This movie does a lot of explaining, and there's very, very little payoff in it. And there's for a movie about different souls and different whatever, there's not a lot of soul to it. I was really bummed out by it. I didn't expect to like it because, again, it's like the Mackie film. It's very, very big budget, straight to streaming, poorly reviewed piece of junk. And I really, especially if you're going, maybe Paramount didn't know this was going straight to streaming. I don't know. This and their other giant film that it produced independently that they sold to Amazon, Tomorrow War. They were trying to tell standalone big event film.
Yeah.
And I want to get behind that. And I could kind of, with Tomorrow War, as dumb as it is, and at least I thought was fun in the right places. I don't think this movie's fun. What is this movie? This movie sucks.
Yep. All right. Next,
I appreciate the ideas behind it, but they don't.
Yeah.
They don't. You abandon them when there's an explosion or a gunfight at stake. You immediately abandon them, and that's dumb and sad.
One of the more anticipated films of the past year was Edgar Wright's return to cinema, and he does it in Last Night in Soho.
Not really a sci-fi movie. There's a time travel aspect to it, but is it psychological? What is it? This has been billed as sort of a horror movie, but it's not really a horror movie either. One of the things that's really fun about it is, what is it? And we're not going to spend another second on that. That's pointless. What it is really inventive and really fun and really interesting and exciting and involving. So yay.
Yeah.
I can tell you that the downfall of this film, at least for me, this is one guy's reaction, because the first hour and 20 minutes or so were just really involving and interesting and scary, and I was off balance and I didn't know what was going on. I love not knowing what's going on. So I love those kinds of movies, and I love that here's a movie that embraces that.
There you go.
Because you just got to go along for the ride. And if it's important that you figure out what's going on, eventually the movie will tell you, well, this film fell down for me. It does. There's actually a almost too simple solution to everything that goes before it. And I sort of felt let down by that, even though I didn't see it coming necessarily. I was like, oh, I like this movie so much when I didn't know what was going on. When I had it all explained for me, I didn't like it as much. So part of let me explain to you what's going on, whether it's, I don't mean character wise, but like filmmaker wise, like all the flashbacks at the end of The Sixth Sense, for example, or, however you're going to make that case to us. When the big reveal ends up being the big ending, it has to work awesomely. And this one worked for a lot of people, so I don't want to totally diss on it. It's well done. Edgar Wright's really inventive filmmaker.
Yeah.
The two actors who are essentially play the same person.
Anya Taylor-Joy.
Yeah, and in the past,
is it Thomas and McKenzie?
Thomas and McKenzie in the sort of in the present. It's sort of neither are in the present. They're both in the past, but past and distant past.
Yeah, right.
It's about this wannabe fashion designer, and she's sort of obsessed with the past. And when she sees, or when she experiences through crazy happenstance, a chance to live part of her consciousness in the past, she just gets addicted to it like a drug. And it turns out it's not what you think, and you probably shouldn't have gotten all broiled up into this. So it's a great mystery, like all are. She's she gets obsessed with this other girl that she discovers in the past and wants to find out what happened to her. So there's an investigation, and it's got all this great active stuff in it, and I love that. And so I liked it, but I wish I would have liked the ending more, is all I can say. But that's we're not going to hold it against this one, because there's so much of it is so great. And your opinion, and it really is true, your very valid opinion could be totally the opposite of mine on the ending, and we could still get along and live on Earth together, and it would be totally cool. So this may be a movie where the ending makes people go, wow, yeah. And if that happens for you, then it's tip top, best of its kind. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
You know what's nice to know is if everything goes to pot and the world ends and we have a post-apocalyptic, existence on Earth, it's nice to know that Tom Hanks is going to survive it.
Yeah.
And I think that's comforting in a way. And we get to see him do that in Finch.
Tom Hanks loves his dog, knows he's dying of a terminal illness, and so he creates a robot to take care of his dog after he's gone. And they need to get from somewhere in Missouri, I want to say, like St. Louis to California before the movie's over. And it's him and this robot trying to learn how to be a person. I mean, it's classic, simple Disney cartoon sci-fi stuff, and it's really, really well done, because Tom is what he is, he's great in it. But this film was like, as good as it was, and as simple as its obstacles were, like its obstacles really were, something is in the middle of the road, this bridge is out, like it was just this very lovely, simple thing, that because of that allowed it its humanity to shine through, which is what it wants to do. Worked really, really great. I found it a bit, I don't want to say condescending, because that's not the right word, but I found it a bit like the meaning of it all a bit sort of oversimplified, and you know what I mean? But it's lovely. It is sort of a feel good movie, and even though there's, like I say, there's things in their way and there's danger on the road to the end of the film, I don't know, and it's expertly crafted, like really, really well made film. The robot you couldn't really have been, it's not a guy in a suit, although it almost could have been. It just feels like such a part of the environment, and everything is, there's not a special effect like out of place in the whole thing, which I really, really like. It's important that you buy into that completely, so that you can have this little bedtime story of a thing work, and it worked. It's just still, I'm just a little old for bedtime stories, probably. It's more me, I think, than the movie itself. I liked it.
Well, excellent.
I saved it for a night where I knew I'd really want to feel happy and warm, and it didn't knock my socks off as a movie, but it did accomplish that task.
There was a night when Ryan just wanted a movie hug, and he got a movie hug. So, dear listener,
a limp and unconvincing hug, but a hug I will take nonetheless.
All right. Hey, listener, do you remember when we talked at great length about Dune and how excited we were for Denis Villeneuve's Dune? Well, Dune came out. We saw it.
Everybody saw Dune.
Everybody saw Dune, and Dune was fun.
Mostly at home, but still. Yep. Yeah, Dune was great. First half of Dune. Yeah. There's more Dune coming.
More Dune.
We're gonna wait and see what that second part of Dune is, because the one thing I'll say two things about Dune. One, yes, more like this. Yeah. So visually, the scale of the thing, the artistry behind it, the intensity of performances, especially by everyone involved, by every single one involved, but especially by Rebecca Ferguson. Holy moly.
Yeah.
Holy moly. Just a character and a performance that's completely worthy of her immense talent. So joyful to see. Yeah. Please make the sequel, and they're gonna. Woo! Yes. But the thing from a Dune perspective and from a universe building perspective, they left everything off the table. Like they told a big long movie that got more of the plot of Dune than we ever could have deserved, really.
Right.
But the world building stuff, all the ideas behind it, most of them, not all of them, but most of them never really even mentioned. And all of them ultimately very important in the puzzle that is Dune. But there's some options for how to do a Dune sequel when you only have the big ending of the story left to tell. And a lot of that is revisiting a lot of these moments with a lot of these same characters and same actors, and maybe getting some of that back on the table before it's revealed how important it is, or maybe even after. Right. Normally that's a trick I don't like, but I could see that coming. So the jury's still out on whether Dune is a satisfying experience. They have to stick the landing. A lot of the ideas that are about to come up are very complicated and weird. Mm-hmm. There's tons and tons of big scale action left, so we got that to look forward to. Zendaya fans, tons of Zendaya coming. I know it's only 7 minutes out of 2.5 hours. That's so mean.
Yeah.
So mean, you poor Zendaya fans.
She's good in those 7 minutes. She's
great. She starts the movie off. It's not that she's not important. It's just the way that filmed. I mean, if you knew the story, you're like, they're gonna stop at the halfway point. She's not going to be in this much. She shouldn't be in like every other frame of the trailers and stuff.
I mean, they really, that again, they're playing with our, their
studio was messing with you, Zendaya fans.
Studio was,
she's great in it, and there's lots of promise for where that goes. So
so stick with it, Zendaya fans, come back, because she's going to kick ass in the second movie.
But you got robbed. Yeah, but you also got robbed in circus movie. What's that stupid movie called?
Greatest Showman.
Oh yeah, you got robbed in that movie too, because she's in a whole chunk of that movie, and that movie's terrible.
Yep, it was terrible.
At least Dune was good, and it's a potential 4 more 2.5 hour epic sci-fi films that spoiler alert, she would be in all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Something to look forward to.
Yep. And let's give it up for Timothée Chalamet. I mean, he's a really good Paul Atreides. I like that. I liked him. He was good.
We'll see.
I liked him. I'll give it that.
I told you I liked all of them, but we'll see. He didn't have to do anything except go, what? And pretend to work the controls accurately. Eventually, when he's got to become the messianic leader of, we'll see if he pulls that off. Because it's I can see him doing it, but
no, you're right. This movie really is Rebecca Ferguson's and Oscar Isaac's. Oscar Isaac is really good too. I love those scenes.
Yeah, the difference is that Rebecca, Rebecca, the novel with Oscar Isaac with Duke Leto it's all there, and it's rich and wonderful and awesome and tragic, and you just love it. With his concubine, the Lady Jessica, it's not, and they had to put it there and insist that it was there every step of the way. And I'll tell you one last thing. I read an interview with her. I read every interview I could with them. They set Tim and Zendaya out on the circuit together because they look great together and have great chemistry together and stuff. Mm-hmm. And they sent these people out in these different groups. Well, it was Denny and Rebecca that went out together, and I don't think that's part of that was so that she could poke him and bug him and get him to sort of be a little different on these press junkets and not get into the weeds of what the thing was, which is where he lives, and God bless him. That's why the movie's so awesome. But she just said she was flattered that they wanted her to do this sort of thing. But what she said was, I'm telling you right now, I'm not interested in her as a heroic character. I think her actions speak for themselves. And I think that part everyone gets to see. I'm interested in the guilt and the fear behind what this person has done. and what it means to her throughout. And that just, it comes through in every scene. And yet, just as she said they would, the heroic actions they still happen, and it's still awesome. So you really get it all in this just glorious way. Oscar the same, but Oscar's Duke Leto's.
Yeah.
We'll get into Dune. We can't sit here and do the whole end of the show on Dune, but we'll get into Dune big time as it goes. Oscar's stuff is on the page. It's the words that come out of his mouth. It's just philosophy, the lessons that he teaches, the big emotional reactions that he has. She's keeping it all tight and not sharing it with anybody except us. And it's glorious. Right. It's glorious. I've told you guys how much I love performances like that. And here's my favorite actor who does that in this huge substantive role and just knocking it every second of it out of the park. I just can't tell you how powerful a cinematic thing that is that makes the movie for me. So yeah, Tim's great. I mean, they're all great though. Josh Brolin's great in it.
Josh Brolin's
who's the guy
really
who plays Thufir with the umbrella? He's genius. The dude from he's so good. Steven something, long time stage actor who now
Stephen McKinley Henderson.
So good. You know, obviously the bad guys are really, really good in it, which is a nice change. Bautista's good in it. David Demetlian plays Piter's barely on screen, but he's delightful. He's so good in it.
Yeah.
That's such good actor and casting. I wish there was more of him in it. I know it's already a long movie, but that guy's so interesting and there's so much to him. And I just wish there was more of him. Stellan Skarsgård. The list goes on and on and on. Who am I forgetting? The big star, Jason Momoa. Everybody loves
Jason
him.
Momoa. Yeah, Javier Bardem. Shang. Anyway, Charlotte Rampling as the Reverend Mother.
But entirely behind a veil where you can barely see her, and yet the performance bleeds through Charlotte Rampling.
All right,
you couldn't do any better than Charlotte Rampling, Joel. It's so good.
I know. Let's take a few minutes because we're not going to talk a lot about these films, but of course,
we said we weren't going to talk about Dune though, and here we are.
No. But here's because we have comic book movie. You know, obviously a lot of comic book movies come out. There's going to be whole shows dedicated to the Marvel universe, the DC universe. You know, we're going to talk about this whole Gesamtkunstwerk.
Is that a threat? It sounds like a threat.
Well, how do we not? At some point in this show, in this podcast, they
come up all the time.
Yeah.
I think not to cut you off completely, but sorry, I shouldn't do that. But
no.
You've all seen all these. There's not a lot we can bring to the party at this point. So we're just going to blow through them kind of quickly so that we recognize that they were part of this movie season. And so that we don't take too much time on something we're going to talk a lot about.
Yeah. Because we have some awesome stuff coming up. But let's just take a couple minutes. We had Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and Spider-Man No Way Home, and the Eternals all coming out in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and let alone the shows that were also on, that were all canon. And then in the DC, and Venom, Let There Be Carnage from the Sony, also kind of goes with that. And then we have the Suicide Squad coming out in the DC universe. So Black Widow, Scarlett Johansson getting a solo movie.
Black Widow on its own merits is really fun, entertaining. It's got big action in it. It's got fun performances. The thing I'll say about Black, and I don't want to review what's not there. On its own merits, it really was very enjoyable. She's an interesting character, and you know, I liked it. But it's not a spy movie. That's shameful. It's not really about her character. That's a misstep. Its action beats follow exactly the same visuals from Civil War. That's Civil War. No, it's Winter Soldier that it copies. Yeah, Winter Soldier. Yep. Sorry. I see. I know enough to at least correct myself. So that's the last. If that truly is the last moment we spend with that character, they sort of missed the boat altogether, which I think sucks. But because her behind the lines solving a mystery and using her skills to like that had to be the heart of the thing. And I think you could have had all this other stuff too. that opening scene, Joel, so where her and her sister are being separated or whatever's going on there, that's so powerful. And you're like, wow, it's going to be this kind of movie. I'm so into this.
Yep.
And it isn't. It's some other kind of movie, and it just bums me out because even though it's good, it's the same shit they've been giving us over and over and over again, truly, and that's too bad. That to me was a letdown. So,
and then we also had Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Really fun and good, and fun with a big capital F. That big action sequence in the bus at the beginning. As soon as Kingsley shows up in it, my God, is it really, really great. Their journey out to that sort of lost village or whatever with what's he keep talking to? They got that creature with them or whatever.
Oh yeah, I don't remember what that thing was called.
But so funny the way he's interpreting for it and stuff. Funny and human and wonderful. This is the big giant criticism of Iron Man 3 was the fact that this ultimate sweet ass Marvel big bad was turned into this cheap alcoholic British down on his luck actor. I thought it was a glorious reversal in that film, although that film was silly, admittedly. And the fact that it pays off in this one is just so wonderful. Mandarin, and that you've got this British guy who's playing this Asian bad guy in this Asian centric film. Like everything about it is like, oh, thank God we have this now.
Yeah.
I thought the whole second half of the movie, like I was fighting not to fall asleep during. I thought the big fight at the end, while kind of pretty, was weird, and I had a hard time latching onto it. And really, as soon as they get to that village, it became just very formal thing. Yeah. Very formal sort of Chinese thing that had a little too much of the live action Mulan to it. It was a little too reverent, and we lost some of the fun that we've been having up until that point. But that's not a deal breaker. That movie was still really, really fun. It just somewhere along the line it stopped being fun, and even when it tried in the final half of the film, it failed to be fun then, which those failures were pronounced because they kept going back to the comedy well, and there was nothing there. There's nothing left.
Yeah.
It's still it's a first movie it's an origin story. It worked really, really good. I like those characters. I'm excited to see them again. Yeah,
Simu Liu that dude he's great. He's super charismatic. Perfect for a superhero action film thing.
And his sister is everything we're used to seeing in these kind of movies. The very serious, very, superstar kung fu genius, always does everything right character. It's his buddy, it's his sidekick.
It's Aquafina, that she gets to
so fun. I mean, she's not that different. She's not that different than someone you run across in real life, but so different for this kind of film. And it's the melding of those things in the early part of the film. It's just delightful. So there's enough delightfulness in it that the fact that I was sort of let down by the ending, I'm not going to hold against it.
Next up is we'll go over to DC real quick for the Suicide Squad.
Well, these are sort of in chronological order of when they came out. So
sure,
but yeah, we can jump around, whatever. They're their own. If they're not their own thing, they don't deserve to exist, in my opinion. So
yeah. The Suicide Squad going to DC, sort of a it's weird. Is it a sequel? Is it a reboot? Is it whatever?
It's a sequel.
Yeah. It's
a sort of direct sequel. It has all the same sans one. It has all the same actors playing all the same characters.
That's So I guess that
and that other stuff clearly happened, and this is clearly another further adventure. I don't know why. I get why people who hate the Suicide Squad want it to be something else, but again, why are you getting hung up on that? It's clearly a sequel, and it's great. It's everything you wanted that the other movie wasn't. So
yeah, and we
live free or die, I say.
Yep. So we have, in this, we have, James Gunn, taking his talents to DC, and he's working with Margot Robbie, Idris Elba, John Cena, Joel Kinnaman, Viola Davis, Michael Rooker, Nathan Fillion, John Ostrander, Jai Courtney, Jay Courtney, and of course, our favorite dude. How does? Oh my God, Pete, how is he not?
Yeah, Dave.
Again,
damn your
IMDb
Eastern European
drive me
last
nuts.
name.
Yeah,
It's not even hard to say. It's hard to remember how to say. Which that's even more frustrating because we love you, mate, and you're a friend of a friend, and I just wish I got your name right at least once on the show. It's coming someday. It's gonna happen.
David Dastmalchian.
Yeah, so good.
Yep.
Maybe the best in this thing quietly somehow.
Oh yeah,
I don't know. John Cena is really, really good in it too.
Yep.
Because I think those guys are allowed to be something different. I think Idris, Margot, we've seen all this shit before. Not that they're bad in it somehow, but the problem with the earlier film was it lacked a certain imagination. It was trying to ground all this crazy crap in reality, but you can't. This film's a fantasy. There's no reality in this. It ends with this big giant mammoth thing destroying the city, and they got to take it down. It's got a big Fantastic Four ending on the end of it, which is great. The weirder, the better. Yeah. And that's worthy of it because really this film doesn't have hardly any action in it. It's got a lot of choreographed violence. That's not action. The action doesn't come till the very, very end. And then even when it comes, it's not super impressive. So what do we got, Joel? You got all the stuff in between, man, all the walk and talks. That's where this movie comes to life and is wonderful. And that's a nice switch that you're not waiting around for the action. In fact, you whether you know it or not, if you're like me, you're waiting for the action to be done. So all these people can start talking to each other again. Cause that's
kind of, yeah. You're kind of right. Yeah.
And then that's what you'd expect from Gunn. The Guardians of the Galaxy films have the same strengths and weaknesses. It's when he's working on this level of storytelling, that's what you get. This great, quotable, fantastic stuff. These weird, contentious relationships that nevertheless find a little happy little snuggie to live in together. It's got all that. I thought it was fun. And I was predisposed to hate it. And it has everything I could think that I might hate about a movie like this in it. And I still liked it. So that's a sign of good filmmaking, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yes. Silly fun. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Super violent. Venom, Let There Be Carnage.
Yeah. Why? Why'd you just do it all again and not do anything different? What the hell? That first movie, I didn't love it, but there's something going on in it that I was like, okay, it feels dangerous. This film felt like you were sort of blowing off the danger and that the violence was just happening. We were all supposed to just giggle at it.
Yeah.
Even the dark stuff that our heroes do, which in Venom is important, was sort of tossed off. It's not crap or anything. It's good. It's got good CG action in it. Tom Hardy's good in it, but this really felt like this. It felt creatively empty exercise in making the same movie again, and I just thought that was shameful. These guys made their peace with each other. Now let's find out what that is. And in this film, they break up right away at the beginning. It's about them finding their way back to each other. So it's literally the same. Like, why do I need you? I know why I need you, but why do I need you again? And it had to be about something more than that. And just adding in the Bizarro Venom or the other Venom, Carnage, he's called, into it so that you have a more equal mano-y-mano is not enough because that mano-y-mano shit is getting old. Two big things smashing the shit out of each other for the last 20 minutes of a movie. I mean, that's as old as the Incredible Hulk and the first Iron Man film. You got to do more than that. It's got to be more story than that. The women in your film can't just be Kristen Dunst like damsels for Tobey Maguire to save at the end. It got to be more than that. So this film lets you down, but it's not garbage. I mean, it passed the time. There's that one moment. We talked about this back a little while ago, the imaginary friend, the ghost that haunts you, the person you're talking to that nobody else can see or hear. Like that, if you do that right and you take it a little easy, which this does to its credit, you could have these great moments. There's this moment where they're talking and Venom keeps interjecting and Hardy's trying to basically trying to kiss this ass of this person we all know is awful. And there's this great line reading by whoever does the Venom. I think Hardy does it, where he goes, "What a dick." And I'm not sure why that's funny, but it's because it's perfect. It's like, it's musical. When you hear something in a song that's like, oh, that, you know, that part in Love the One You're With where the organ kicks in after the second chorus, like that just, wow, it just lifts you to another stratosphere. And every once in a while, something like that happens in a movie. And so Venom's not garbage. I mean, it has its moments. That made me guffaw loud enough for my neighbors to hear, because it was not because it's so funny in and of itself, because it just landed so perfectly. And any movie that can do that can't be all bad, but they're going to be more Venom. Yeah, but please try harder than this, you know. Maybe when Spider-Man's in it, it'll be better or something, but I don't know. We'll see.
And to end this thing, my one trip out to the movies this year, where I hazmat suited up, essentially, was I wanted to take in the big theater Spider-Man No Way Home, and it was great. It was great.
Everything was cracked up to be, right?
To me, it was. It absolutely was.
A lot of heavy expectations for Spider-Man. I will confess, I have not gone out to the theater since the last movie I saw in the theater was Captain Marvel, and I think that was only because my apartment was flooded. I had to go somewhere.
I remember that.
Yeah, I literally had to go somewhere, so I went and saw that.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything since. So I didn't see this, but everybody loves it. It's going to be great, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, if you have an attachment to all of the the previous Spider-Man franchises, there's elements of this that are just absolutely delightful. To me, I don't want to, in case there are, like for you who hasn't seen it, there's some things that I do want to say about it, because I loved it. I had the best time. And it also
there's been a lot of Spider-Man movies, there's been a lot of Spider-Man movies, and they're all the same movie. And if this one's really different and it comes along, like, just structurally it's different, the idea behind it's different, and the fact that it makes you feel great about every Spider-Man movie that came before it, what a effing trick that is. So I haven't seen it yet, but but that's impressive.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It is. It's an impressive superhero film. I mean, it's still a superhero film.
You built off the stuff that you've done in the first two films, character-wise and all that. You still have some of that, plus you have something totally different and totally different this time. Yeah. Maybe not totally different, because there's a little bit of it in the Doctor Strange movie, right? But really a whole different comic book thing that these comic movies haven't dared mess much with.
Yeah.
And like I said, that other thing I said, I won't say it again. I already kind of spoiled it. So,
but it's it's really good. The chemist, when it's not Spider-Man, when it's Peter Parker and MJ and oh my God, I can never remember his friend's name, Ned. When it's the three of them, they're really fun.
Where he's like, "How'd you find me?" My Ned sense.
Yeah. I mean,
and he's like, "Nah, it's the GPS on whatever. It's a car commercial." So
yeah, and the three of them are really, really fun together. And Zendaya and when MJ and Ned are, when Spider-Man's doing his Spider-Man stuff, and it's just MJ and Ned, the two of them are really, really charming, are really, really fun together. And
is Ned's girlfriend from the last film still in it? She's my favorite.
She is in it. That's
the girl I would have had a huge crush on in high school.
Betty Brant, Betty Brant. She's in it. So yeah, there's not in it a lot. There's a lot of stuff they have to accomplish.
I'm just saying, not her specifically, but
yeah. It's
she's great. She was great. And what was that movie? The Nice Guy. She's so funny in that.
Yeah.
That actress really good. But all of them, the ensemble finds their way into this one way or another, even if they have to take a back seat in this one. That was coming. Eventually, he's got to be a full-fledged superhero and the high school stuff's got to not be so important.
Yeah.
Plus, he's going to turn 30 at some point here, and we really do have to leave that behind.
Right.
If he's going to keep playing this film until he's an old man, which I got. And we'll just sidestep the other story, which was that this movie that came out when COVID numbers were at an all-time high made bank bigger than any other movie ever, and that it wasn't just movies people weren't going to see. It was just non-giant Spider-Man movies that people weren't going to see. That if there's a sad part of the tale, it's nothing against Spider-Man. I mean, good for it. It's the one that got people back into their seats, but it's not the only or even the most worthy film that came out in the last 2 years. So it's a little sad that if that's what it's going to take.
Yeah, sure.
That bums me out, but that's nothing against it. A matter of fact, that's just more reason to love it.
Yep. So that is going to do it for this week's episode.
We should do a show. We should do a whole show, Joel, where I talk about movies I haven't seen.
We could.
I mean, all things considered, I'm not super terrible at it, am I?
No.
Just saying.
Yep.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. We have one more episode where we're going to talk about some movies of I think one more episode, but we have some pretty kick-ass movies to talk about here next time.
The biggest art movies of the year, and the big mixed in there, the big topical talked about films too.
Yep.
You don't need to talk about Spider-Man when everyone agrees it's awesome and why. It really isn't going to spark a ton of conversation out there in the world. A little bit. Yep. Any good movie would, but some of these coming up, they're not nearly as good, but they were the things to discuss, and so we'll get to dig into them, and that's going to be fun.
Mm-hmm. So of course, if you are watching this, if you're watching the video version of this, like and subscribe on YouTube. You can also reach out to us at the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan page on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Ask Joel and Ryan, and email us at askjoelandryan@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you as always. So until next time, we can't wait to talk about more movies of 2021. Have some Spider-Man.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.